Well, man, I'm pumped to have you on the podcast. I know we've been trying to connect for a while. For those of you guys that don't know Brian Hess, he's just a committed family man. He has 4 kids, a beautiful wife, just an incredible business, multiple businesses actually, and he's also the host of the Morning Perspective podcast and CEO of the Pavement Group. So, brother, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Long time coming here. Long time coming.
Oh,
excited
for sure.
to be here. Excited to do this. And as I told you, we're going to flip these tables here in the near future and introduce my audience to the details of you too. So I appreciate the opportunity, man.
Totally. I always enjoy meeting guys that are married up. So good job.
No doubt. I call it out kicking your coverage, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Yep. So Brian, one of your, we had mentioned and so gone back on a couple things, and you had mentioned one of your superpowers is really kind of inspiring people and motivating people and working with teams. And I'm curious because it's such an important skill. Where do you think you got that from?
That's a good question, man. I don't know. I think it's, number one is just a good, stable family environment, kind of starting at home and, with my mom and dad and my brother and, working as a team in your house and, playing sports growing up and, I guess being a leader in those athletic environments first is probably a natural first step for a lot of young people. It's a place where when you're young, you end up on a sports team and you figure that out, kind of naturally, I guess. You don't really realize what you're doing at a young age, but as you step into, school and then, maybe leadership positions in high school, as in the, senior class, kind of leading in those situations as a vice president of the senior class, things like that. So, I think it just happens naturally as you're young. And then as you get older and you start to recognize those things, you're able to develop it to another level.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't play a lot of high school sports. So I was more of like a skateboarder kid. And it's interesting. So I think that's a great point. People that played high school sports or college sports, they got to see, especially if they worked with good coaches, right? They got to see what good leadership looks like. How do you inspire and motivate a team when they're either down and out or going through some tough times? Or it's huge. It's huge. So I have 2 boys, right? I have my 5 and my 8-year-old boy, and I'm hoping that they will decide to play sports because there's just so much value that comes from playing sports. I think you just had somebody on recently. This
morning. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Who did you have on your podcast?
A buddy of mine from high school actually went right out of high school and started at Michigan and won a national championship in 1997 and then went on to play in the NFL. His name's William James. So he played 11 years in the NFL and we just reconnected. We just, out of high school, he went on and, went to college and then went on to play in the NFL. And we recently reconnected and spent some time having lunch together recently. And man, to hear the stories of that journey. And again, we talked about it actually on the show this morning so he was coached by Lloyd Carr, who, won a national championship as a coach at Michigan. And, Will went through some times that were pretty challenging when he was in college. And he talked about just the investment that Lloyd Carr made into him as a player, knowing that he had so much potential, but he also had so much potential to go the wrong way. And so now he is pouring back into his own community, modeling that same example with younger kids that Lloyd Carr did for him in college. And they're still friends to this day, right? His college coach is now a lifelong friend. And it all started with just, his ability to lead him and show a good example. And for Will, that was a father figure to him. He didn't have much of that growing up. His uncle was kind of a father figure to him. And then he got to college and this guy kind of became a father figure example to him. And now he's pouring that back into other people.
Mentors, the power of mentors. Do you have any mentors in your life?
So I have a few. So I hire coaches just like you do,
okay.
Right? To kind of improve things and give me perspectives that maybe I wouldn't see myself. So I'm part of the Arte Syndicate. So Andy Frisell and Ed Milet run that group. And then I've got some other people that I work with, one-on-one to kind of, show me what I can't see, map out a path that maybe I wouldn't be able to map out myself, show me the blind spots, all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I believe in that wholeheartedly, as I know you do too. I mean, I think it's a huge piece of what people miss is not, maybe not trusting or not wanting to invest that money or time into mentors. But I think it's the single most important thing that we can do. I mean, I would venture to say that anybody that has had any level of success in their life, they can go back and map it back to what someone shared with them along the way, lessons they were taught either by their parents or by a mentor in business or a coach, an athletic coach, something like that. So yeah, believe heavily in it, man.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer too. One of my first business coaches, I think we were doing about 2.5 million in revenue at Superior Restoration, and I hired this guy because we were basically just our employees. We just had a challenging time with our employees, our leadership. My my team was just a little dysfunctional. Our systems were all over the place. It was creating a lot of stress and chaos in my life, and I felt like I was in this chokehold where the business was just like, this was choking me out. And so I brought him on. I said, hey man, help me like systemize this thing so we can sell it, because it's just too much. It's too much to handle right now. We just had a lot of turnover. And he sat down with me and sat down with our company first and all of our employees and got a good gauge for everything. And he's like, hey, so here's the issue. You're the issue. He's like, you're the problem with the entire organization. You're like, your leadership style, like you not being on time, you kind of dropping the ball in certain areas. And so I worked with them for 6 years, like this one coach just for 6 years straight. And eventually right after that, I realized, hey, once we cleared out some of our employees, I realized, hey, I actually enjoy the business. If I have the right team in place, business is fun. Like it's actually a lot of
Couldn't
fun
agree
if
more.
and what's interesting, what inspires me more, Brian, is I am most inspired when I have a really good employee on the team, or some key, like just awesome employees that cause me to step up my game. That's when I'm most fired up to come into the office and to come work. But if it's just a bunch of people that I'm not that excited about, then that's where I lose some of the passion.
Couldn't agree more. I feel the same. I actually just said that to someone this morning that I was talking to that just stepped out to go on their own, right, into business. And he said, what advice would you give me? And I said, he's right now a solo entrepreneur. And I said, as soon as you possibly can, get yourself some people, because they will raise your level of performance to a new level. You will feel that responsibility to them, and you will feel that energy transfer, right? Back and forth. Some days they're going to be charged up and they're going to charge you, right? They're going to be at a higher level or a higher frequency than you are. And other days it's going to be your responsibility, right? And as a leader, that is the single greatest gift to me. It's fun to win yourself. It's 10 times more enjoyable and fulfilling to experience it with other people and to watch them win, right? To watch them win at levels they've never won before. I've been watching some of the testimonials from the event that you did, and it's like, that's what you want, man. You can feel like I get chills listening to that, like people finding another level in their life and that light bulb coming on and just showing them what's possible. And that there's nothing more exciting in business than that, is just putting those foundational pieces in place and then just watching it grow, man. It's super exciting.
Yeah, you mentioned the light bulb. That's kind of when I found out what my true passion was, and what my purpose was, because I'm kind of always on this journey of figuring out how do I maximize and create the most success in my life. Like that was my initial motivation, but over the years it's transformed into no longer, hey, what can I accumulate and like create? It's more of who can I become through this entire process of life. Like I'm way more interested in who I can become. And so I'm always figuring out like, hey, well, to become the best version of myself, I really need to be in alignment, like with my purpose, I feel like. And so I had a coach, right? He was like, hey, so what fires you up? Like what gets you most excited? And I'm like, you know what? When I'm talking and coaching an employee and the light bulb turns on, like it clicks and they just are able to perform at a higher level now because they just see it. I'm like, that actually gets me the most excited. Like I like systems, I like processes, I like sales, I like marketing, I like all this stuff. But seeing somebody where their light bulb turns on, like that is just so fun and rewarding to me. Like I could do that all day long. You know,
That's
what
it, man.
what would you say is the most exciting thing for you in your business? Like what inspires you? Like what gets you fired up?
The first thing that came to my mind is the next thing, right? It's like, you know, as you accomplish things, it's like, you know, finding that higher gear is the easiest way to describe it. It's like, you know, you feel like, you know, when you start a business, you know, you're just trying to make it, right? You're just trying to get to that point where you feel like, you know, this is a real thing. And then you get to the part that it's a real thing and you're like, then it's like, how far can I push it? Right? Like how many dreams can I make come true through this singular mission that we have, right? One of the things that came to mind when you were talking is one of my earliest mentors. He told me, you know, definitely set a goal of becoming a millionaire, not for the money, but for who you become in the process, right?
Mm.
And it's that finding yourself along the way and finding that tribe of people that want to do the same thing, that share that same vision. And then, you know, finding, I guess the other thing that's most exciting for me is innovating, right? Like finding ways to do things that they haven't been done before, or implementing technology into things that make it go faster. We were talking about that before we jumped on here, is like, you know, how do you mold all this together? How do you take that education that's out there and then make that practical application within your business to make it rise to a new level, and then have that new level be able to reward everybody that's in that boat with you?
That's right on. You, I can tell you're all about creating new things, right, and developing, getting to the next thing. And so what's interesting is you started when did you start the Pavement Group?
2018. So the beginning of
2018.
2018.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've kind of merged. Did you start some of the I know you're working on some podcasts. Like what's your vision? Like what's your vision for this thing? Because it seems like you're building out different pieces of it, right?
Yep. Yeah. So when we started the Pavement Group, and so we've got, you know, we perform some work ourselves, and then we work across the country. So we have, you know, partner contractors that we work with. And so I wanted to create something that was unique in that space where, you know, those people that do for us, we were able to give back for them. And so Top Contractor School was kind of a spin-off of that, like being able to reward back, you know, coach and train the contractors that help us to level up their businesses. So to be able to give back to them and to create an educational platform within an industry that really didn't have any, right? There wasn't a whole lot of guidance in our world, in our vertical, being able to do that. So it was kind of just made sense. And then, you know, from there, all of the social media stuff that you see that we do today was, you know, really, that was an idea that we had when we started the business. Like we knew that we wanted to reach a lot of people, and we wanted to build the largest contractor network that we possibly could. And so the easiest way to do that is to, you know, tell your story on social media and connect with a lot of people and network with a lot of people and get that to scale. And then connecting Top Contractor School to that, we had something of value to be able to offer people, right? Education, advancing their own company. And then, you know, most recently, Lead Revenue kind of came into the fold, and that is a digital marketing company specifically focused on helping contractors. And I started with them just as a customer, and it helped us so significantly that it made me, you know, more interested. And now I have, you know, a lot of people within Top Contractor School, a lot of contractors that do work for the Pavement Group. And so ultimately, all of these things that are kind of ancillary around the Pavement Group are designed to be able to help people move their businesses forward and to give back to those people who are giving to us.
Beautiful. Beautiful. How do you manage all that? Right. So that's
That's
always the question everybody asks me. And I love hearing from other high performers on what their strategies are, right? Because you have your family, and you have your businesses, you're a man of God, and you have all these things, right? How do you, like, what's your strategy around managing that, around trying to stay as balanced as possible?
I would say, you know, number one is just organization. So it starts, I think, with a morning routine, you know, making sure that you've got some rhythm to your day instantaneously. So for me, it's following that same exact process every single morning, every single week, so Sunday evenings, I take the time to plan out. So intentional, call it proactive versus reactive, right? If you don't plan out the key things that are going to happen in your week and in your day, then the tail's going to be wagging the dog most of the time, right? You can't do all of those things if you are not very intentional about what you're trying to do. And so it starts every morning with that morning routine. And then it's, what I've learned over the past few years is, a couple of things. Number one, be present where you are. So if you're at work, be effective at work. Don't be at work handling things in other places, because it extends the amount of time that you have to spend to accomplish the work, right? And when you're with your family, be present with your family, because if you're doing work while you're with your family, you're not really spending time anywhere. You're spending time in the middle of everything, right? And it's just, you can do far more than you think as you start piling it in, right? I would guess that you would feel the same way, right? What you thought 10 years ago was busy, or 5 years ago, compared to what you're capable of now, it is about pushing that limit, right? Stretching yourself and seeing where is that point. And there are definitely times, man, where I get to that point. I'll come home on a Friday afternoon and I look at my wife and she's like, she knows what it means. It's like, I'm like spent, right? Like I've got nothing left in the tank, and I need a good day of rest, a good day of just kind of shutting everything off. And then I'm good. I'm back to normal. But it's really about, I think, rhythm, right? It's about creating that rhythm in your life and being intentional. And the only way that you can fit that much stuff in is to do those two things. It's creating routines and then making sure that you are sticking to what you're supposed to be doing. And when you look back, what's the quote? They say, we overestimate what we can do in a day, but we underestimate what we can do in a week or a month. And that couldn't be more true for me. Like when I started trying to fit all of this stuff in and try to juggle it all, it always feels like you're falling short in some way, right? You're always, dropping one of the balls you're trying to juggle. But over a period of time, man, you learn how to juggle those balls pretty effectively, and you drop them less frequently. And then at some point, you learn to feel in control of that situation, and you can add another ball, right? And that's how I've tried to do it. It's still by no means is it perfect. I still drop the ball fairly frequently, but as you learn to juggle more and more and more, it gets more normal for you to do it all.
Yeah, it's great. I have my coach, he manages, he's like I think he has about 8 to 10 companies where he's like acting CEO of these businesses. And so could you imagine, right, being the CEO and managing the teams, oversight of the whole company, marketing, like everything for multiple businesses, and coaching. So he has other coaching clients that he has, like all of that. And it's just incredible. So I learned from him years ago just about calendaring, right? Calendaring out my entire week, right? Just pre-planning the entire week and chunking it all and just dedicating specific time. So kind of what I do too is I love that. So it's your routine, right? Whatever your routine's going to be, just follow it. So if it's planning once a week, right, on Sunday, or picking, a specific day that you want to do that, but then following that routine. And then I think picking the top like priorities, like you talked about also, like what are the most important things? A lot of people live and die by their to-do list. That's not the way you leverage and you create the most results, is by just having like, hey, what do I have to do today? It's like, hey, what is the most important things, right? What's the one thing that I need to get done this week? And then keeping that as like a top priority, and then just being disciplined. And that's probably the hardest part, I think, for me also, is being disciplined on achieving those specific things. Like I'll set my priorities. So every week I set my 3 priorities, usually per company, and then I'll go execute on those. And a lot of stuff right now, my inbox is like 75 emails. So I don't get to everything, but that's okay, right? I don't get to all the other little stuff, but I think that's okay. I need to get those top things that will move the business forward, and that's what's most important. And that's like kind of like a discipline that I've built and teach other guys, because we get trapped in this to-do list mentality, dude. Like even my team, my employees, right? Like this is what I have to do. I'm like, well, no, what's the most important? I know you have a lot of things to do, but like, what's most important to get done in your position, in your role.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, when you do this, and you can tell me if you agree, when you plan your week and then you have a to-do list, but you've got critical tasks that you list that those are that have to be, you start to really realize how much stuff is really not as important as you think it is. Like, we are trained, I think, in a lot of ways. Like, I started my career in corporate America. So you're trained to like almost stay busy, right? As opposed to
Yep.
being effective. It's like, well, I've got this long list of stuff, so I look like I'm busy, and that's rewarded a lot of times in some businesses, right? The people that look busy end up rising up the ranks. And so busy is not effective. There's a major difference between those two. And as you really take control of your time and you try to push more things through that pipe, you realize how many things you consistently do that are unimportant.
It's true. Oh yeah. No, and it's so hard getting rid of some of those tasks too. I remember for the longest time, I had the hardest time because I like designing stuff. I like branding. I like marketing. So I was really good at making business cards, like faster than anybody else. I was the business card master. Like I could knock one out in like a minute. And then I would just order it, and I got them at really good prices too, because I had a wholesale contract with like this printing company. So I did it for, I think, like 7 years of my business, and I wouldn't let it go. I'm like, dude, I'm the fastest, I'm the best at it. And it's just, finally somebody was like, dude, are you serious? You run, at that point it was like a $7 million company, and you're doing the business cards. Can you please just give that up? Can you give it up? Like, is that the most important thing? And so it just clicked. I'm like, dude, I got to get rid of that. And so it's hard though. Sometimes it's hard to let go of those little things that you can just do better.
I'm laughing, dude, because there's probably 5 things on my list that that I've had they're not business cards, but they're basically business cards, right? It's the same concept, and because as you're growing into the position that you're in, I think what you're saying is like you don't realize the progress you make sometimes, and so you hold on to these old things because you kind of identify with them, right? Like that like you identified with that task of like doing business cards, like that made you feel accomplished. Yep. There was something about it that made you feel like that was part of who you were. And it takes somebody else sometimes saying to you like, hey dude, you got it. It's happened to me like 3 times this year in our company. Like, hey man, like we need somebody else to do that. That's not something, we need you to be doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, no, but I can do that too. And they're like, no. Like, that's not what we need you to do. But it's tough because you're evolving, and sometimes you don't see your own growth or your own progress to the point that you hold on to these old things because you feel like somehow that's what you're supposed to be doing.
I love how you say that, man. You don't see your growth or your progress or where you've come. You still see yourself as that smaller company, right? Running a smaller company CEO, like you still see yourself as that, but you don't realize like, dude, you're in a totally different place. I remember, what was it? It was about a year or 2 years ago where one of my coaches was like, I was worried about, what was it? It was something like about spending some money, a certain amount of money. Like it was like $1,000 on something. And I was like, just like nitpicking it, like, I know we can get it cheaper. Like, let me spend like some time just like negotiating it. And he's like, you realize you're running, it was probably a year ago, you're running a $10 million company and you're worried about $1,000. He's like, dude, come on. Like you have way bigger things to be worried about than how do you get this to 900? How do you get this to 800? Like that doesn't even matter. You have so much money running through your company. Like don't, like have other people focus on that. You should you shouldn't be even 10,000. He's like, it's because he's like also like describing, right? How do we, with my, and I talk to CEOs about this, right? Because they want to delegate more stuff to their team. And then we start to give like our team budgets on what they can spend, right? What they're able to, what they're able to spend. And so, I originally wanted to give my team like $500 limits, like on, hey, what they have authority to like do without my involvement. And then it went to like 1,000, and then I wouldn't budge. And then eventually I just had to realize, like, no, the size of our company, we can, you can spend up to $5,000, for certain key roles. And it's just challenging, right? Because
Mhm.
I kind of saw myself as a smaller company. I'm like, that's a lot of money. It's like, no, it's not a lot of money. It used to be a lot of money to spend, right? And we get stuck in that old mindset. It's like, no, how do we upgrade that mindset to like, no, you are here, now go start spending money relative to get to the next level, even on marketing.
It's funny. It's funny how that happens too in your personal life first, and then you have to stretch it to the business life, right? Like you don't feel that scarcity necessarily in your personal life, but those behaviors in your business, like it feels like you're letting things get out of control if you give the same leadway that you give to yourself personally to other people. And so what I've had to learn is like money as a final result. That's a great example. Spending $1,000, like the money is not the real, it's not a finite resource, right? Like because your time can create more money. So like the amount of time that you would have spent trying to chase down, to save $200, who's to say that you couldn't have made 10,000 if you went and did something differently? And so
Yep.
people with that, and we're all trained that way. Most people are trained that way from a very small age to, a penny saved is a penny earned, right? Like we're programmed with these monetary
Yeah.
statements that make us think a certain way, and we don't realize. And I just said this in our meeting this week. I said, man, I feel completely different about our company today than I did a year ago, because what I've realized is that as we invest into the right things, we always find a way to drive more revenue as a result of that. And so it is, that idea of the scarcity mindset of like, man, should we do this? Should we not? If it makes sense, we just say yes. And we know that as a team, as a company, it's going to benefit us. It's going to lift us, and that's going to drive more results. And ultimately, the expense line can build as high as it wants, as long as the revenue line continues to grow with it. And so we find ourselves saying yes a lot more frequently than maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, because we know the results of it. It's not, money is not a finite resource. It's not, there's not, I use the analogy, like this is not a 16 cut pizza. You can bake the pizza to be as big as you want. It can serve thousands, right? And so people don't think that way inherently. And you have to train yourself to think that way as a leader in business. And it's scary at times, right? Like you wonder, am I making the right decision, or am I investing into something that's not going to pay that back? And sometimes the answer is going to be yes, you did make the wrong choice. But you can't make zero decisions because you're afraid to lose.
Yeah, I think it starts with that abundance mindset, right? Learning to have an abundance mindset around money. And because sometimes we get caught in that scarcity mindset, and it just takes our energy. Yeah, that's on that note, marketing, like you're diving pretty deep into marketing right now, especially like internet marketing. How do people have an abundance mindset around marketing? Like how should they, how should they be like, what I've found, right? So in my space, and some of the guys that I coach, like in my space, they're afraid to spend money on marketing. I don't know if you've seen that with some of the
Oh,
contractors that you work with. They're afraid to spend money on marketing, and if they spend it, they'll spend like small, little, tiny portions. It's like the craziest thing. And we've always been with Superior, like we just dump money into marketing. But we track it, and we do. I feel like we do it the right way, but so many people are afraid to do that. So, what advice would you give to them, right? And how should they do it? How do they? Because again, they may be coming from that scarcity mindset. But go ahead.
if you want to guarantee yourself to lose money, do it a little bit. That's the best thing I can tell you. You will not know what return you're going to get until well down the line, right? Like, and you have to your point, you have to analyze, and you have to, don't just make a rash decision, actually think about it. But every dollar you spend on marketing is doing something for you, right? It's either eyeballs hitting your logo, hitting your business page, driving traffic to your website, building brand awareness. It's never a waste of money. The question is, could I do it better with something else, right? But the idea in so many businesses, man, like we were guilty of it. You know, when you first start, you don't have a ton of money to put into that stuff. So how do you do it? And so our solution was social media was free. So we were able to build, you know, our online presence through free platforms. And then as our business grew, we started to make those adjustments to go into different places. But I would say, you know, take it serious and jump in. Don't put your toe in the water. You know, like, you know, some of the underpriced marketing solutions that are out there, that's what people do. And so that's why they lack confidence in a marketing company, because there's so many companies out there that will promise you the world and never deliver any results. And so many people have interacted with those companies. I teach this to the people at Lead Revenue. I'm like, man, when you're calling people to do business with them, to do business with contractors, understand that there's been 20 companies, 50 companies before you that have said, we are all of these things and not been, right? And so you have to do your homework, you know, try to find a company that will be willing to educate you on exactly what you're doing and educate you on the path forward. And the other piece of advice I would give them, man, is be involved. It is not something you hand over to someone. No one should be representing your brand but you. A marketing company is there to do the lifting of that, but you should be absolutely involved in every step of the way, creating what that looks like and being part of that. So many times you see people, you know, they decide to do something for $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month, and they think that by paying that money, they're going to get the result. You still have to be part of that process to ultimately get the best result. You might get some result by paying someone and having them do it for you. You're going to get 10 times the result by being actively involved and engaged and really paying attention. And to your point, analyzing that to see what is working, what is not. Do we put more money here and take it from here? You have to keep your finger on the pulse of that all the time. But I would say go all in, you know, try to do as much as you possibly can, because it's an education. It's like paying for college. When you pay for college, you don't know exactly what you're going to learn, but you just pay for it, right? And marketing is the same. You have to get an education, and the only way you can do that is pay to play. You have to invest, and then you get the education. But if you sit on the sidelines forever, all the companies like yours that are investing, and mine that are investing, are going to pass you up because you're not playing the game. You can't score, right?
Yeah, it's with Rise Up Kings, we teach a lot of our guys, right? Not only, so beautifully said too. So it's, hey, go all in, right? Like invest more, but track also like how it's going. Because a lot of times people will just be hands off and they won't be tracking. They won't be tracking how it's going, like how many calls. Like something simple for everybody listening, right, is get unique call tracking numbers if your leads come in through calls, right? So you can use a company like callrail.com. They have individual, like, you know, tracking numbers. We have like 30 different phone numbers for our restoration company. Every new piece of marketing, every new thing that we do marketing wise, we have a new set phone number. And then we have a phone number where we can track how many calls are coming through there. So we can say, hey, yeah, that is working. Or shoot, we just spent $3,000 and we got one call. Like we need to kick that thing or tweak it. And then we track, you know, if leads coming through websites with Rise Up Kings, we do a ton of tracking to see what campaign they came in from. So tracking, I think, is like a critical piece, but then just being good, like something we teach our Rise Up Kings grads and the people that go through the program is you're a marketer. Like start to see yourself as a marketer, right? I can tell you're a marketer, Brian, like, you know, so like you are a marketer. You're no longer like a contractor. You're no longer a plumber or this, like you're a marketer. Like we need to master marketing. And so that's why it's critical to stay involved in the process, which is what I love, because the more you're involved, the more you can understand marketing. And if you can understand marketing, anybody can learn it if your intention's there, then you can start to be effective in marketing any company, but especially yours. You got to understand the marketing, and you got to believe at some point that, hey, no, I'm a marketer. I am a marketer, like almost as an affirmation, like I'm a marketer, like that's what I do. I know how to market things. I know how to get creative with branding. Like I know how to get stuff out there.
You're not a businessman. You're a businessman.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. You are a business. And if you don't market that business, nobody's going to know about it. You know, I've been harping on this like forever, like with people in Top Contractor School. I'm like, it's repetition, right? How many times do you see someone? I mean, the first time that I met you on Facebook, it was like, oh, who is this guy, right? And then it's frequency, man. Now I feel like I know you. You feel like you know me,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And it's all through frequency and essentially marketing, even though it's not, you know, it's not direct marketing. Like we're not, you know, always trying to craft a message that's a marketing message. It's about living your life in public so that people can understand that. That's a form of marketing as well, right? People, you know, they want to see the behind the scenes stuff, you know, the content that you've put out recently from Rise Up Kings, like people actually going through the process. That's what people want to see. They want to see, what is this really like? Reading something on a page is one thing that might spark somebody's interest, but being able to put yourself in that situation and say, I belong there. Those guys look like me. I should be part of that program. That comes from crafting the right marketing message and understanding what it is that people need to see to unlock the logical part and then the emotional part of being able to make the decision to invest the money.
What part does God play in your businesses?
What part does what?
God play in your businesses? Like, I'm curious. Is he integrated into it? Is he, you know, just kind of just a foundational part? Is he like, how do you feel? Yeah, where's God's? Where do you place him? Where's his role in your businesses and maybe even your success too?
Yeah. So for me personally, man, you know, huge, right? It's not number one of everything starts with my faith. And, you know, I would say it's funny because I just listened to something that you wrote or put out the other day, and you talked about how you re-engineered your business. You basically started from scratch and made that be the center point of everything. Right. And, you know, I look at that and admire that because, you know, we didn't do that. We started the Pavement Group, you know, just as a business, right? Even though my faith obviously plays a role in that, you know, what I believe certainly cascades down through the company. But for me personally, man, I couldn't do the first thing that came to my mind when you said, how do you handle all this? How do you juggle all this? That was the very first thing that came to my mind, right? It was like, I really don't. Right. I have energy that flows through me that is not mine, that allows me to do things that I certainly couldn't ever do myself. And that comes from starting every day with scripture, you know, relying heavily on the word to get you through the adversity that is bound to happen as a business owner. It's advice that I give my people, right? The people that are on our team, the partners in our businesses, all that stuff. You know, it's interesting to me how many people watch, like, so I do morning perspective, and I don't do that. I have a day that I do the spiritual perspective, and that is focused on my faith. I'm very clear about that. But all of the messages from the beginning, when I wasn't clear about, you know, I just wasn't saying, this is my faith, this is who I am. I can't tell you how many hundreds of messages that I got that said, you are a Christian, aren't you? And so it's woven into every part, right? It's the advice that you give. It's the foundation of everything. And, you know, it is, for me personally, man, I don't believe that I would be anywhere that I am today without it. There was a time in my life where I didn't have it, where I didn't understand it. You know, maybe I had it, but I didn't understand the power of it. I didn't give it the attention that it deserved. And I can just tell you that life is a whole lot better and a whole lot easier when that is the center of everything, right? From your marriage to being a father, to being a businessman, to interacting with people, to being a good friend, to being a good person in your community, all of the above, it all starts in the same place, you know? And so that's a complicated answer, but I would say that it exists everywhere, but it's not as front and center as I heard you say. And that is something that I want to, you know, evolve into, right? I want it to be part of everything, because the gift that it has been to me, I want to be able to share that with as many people as possible.
That's powerful, right? You want to be able to give that to other people, that peace, that, knowing somebody else is carrying the burden with you. Like,
Yeah,
it's hard for me to understand how people can, if you were just alone, dude, taking on life struggles. I was talking with somebody, and we were just talking about anxiety and depression, right? I forgot which one. It's either anxiety or depression is the number one reason people go to the hospital. I think it's anxiety. And so that's the number one reason people are going. And so it's insane. Imagine doing that all on your own and having to just be in your room, right? Just depressed and struggling and knowing there's really nothing else out there. And it's just you. Like, that would be so freaking scary and hard, to just be in that place. So just doing it on your own. So yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my relationship with Christ, for sure. It's allowed me just to hand off the burden, even with Rise Up Kings, and it's tremendous amount of work. And so, I read a prayer every day that's based on that. Like, Lord, just give me peace as I go through the unknown and some of the challenges and struggles that I experience with these men. Right, like, help me to just be at peace. And so just having that peace, man. And it's not easy, right? I love the conversation of God and business. It's not a easy conversation for a lot of people. It's a struggle, right? How much should God be involved in the business? Should he be in there at all? My friend just sold a very, 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 very large company, and it was cool. He had chaplains. That would come into his 12 branches. He had 12 very large branches, and they would come in like once a week, and just not like preaching, but just say, hey, does anybody need anything they want prayer for? And so that's the power of mentorship, right? That's one of my mentors. It just showed like, wow, that's crazy. Like, I could never even imagine having a chaplain come into my office and meet with my team. That's just like next level.
Seems like too awesome to be possible, right?
It does, right? Because people want that support. And even, right, they're not pushing Christ or Christianity or anything like that. They're just saying, hey, do you want some prayer? You want to connect, you want to share anything, because people are struggling, dude. Employees, owners, right? We all have our different struggles that we go through. So I love that conversation, man. And maybe when we catch up on some other, on your podcast or on something else, we can talk about just God and money, right? God and money, God and sex, God and business, how that all plays, how does it flow? Anyway, I love some of the more edgy topics. Those are fun for me. Keeps life exciting.
Every morning I read, I have a daily scripture book, and then I have the Maxwell Daily Reader. And so John Maxwell, just a one pager for every day of the year.
Is that pretty good?
It's amazing, dude. Yeah. There's another one by Tony Dungy that's really, really, really great too. But one of the things about Maxwell is, and a lot of people don't know this, but when he goes and does, corporate speaking events, one of his requirements is that he's allowed to stay for, 15 minutes after, and anybody can leave that doesn't want to be there. But he asks if he's able to share his faith with the crowd. And so I don't know the exact number, but it's north of 100,000 people that he's been able to lead to Christ through,
wow.
His speaking. And so, he's a pastor before he became, the leadership king of the world, pretty much. And, he took that with him into his business, and man, just such a gift, right? To be able to give people that. And that's one of the things, I've said to my wife, like, if I can have a great run in business, maybe I'll become a politician or a pastor, and she goes, well, please become a pastor.
Exactly. Yeah, I would not want to be in that space. No, thank you. Awesome, dude. Well, I think we'll end on that, man. Powerful insights. I'm looking forward to connecting with you more. And I can just tell you're just a powerful guy, dude. You're making a difference. You're impacting people. You're building great businesses. You're taking care of your employees, and now you're teaching other people, right, and helping them also at the same time, other business owners. So love what you do. How can people get in contact with you?
So Real Brian Hess on all platforms. So you can find me just BRIAN, and it's Real REAL is the handle. So that's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those places, LinkedIn. And I've got a text number. I should probably have that up. You can text me now. That's actually, it's up on my Facebook page. So if you go to my Facebook page, you'll be able to see it. But yeah, I'm not hard to find. That's for sure. You can go look me up, and the pavementgroup.com, topcontractorschool.com, leadrevenue.com, all those places. There'll be some information too, but I really appreciate the opportunity, man. I definitely look forward to connecting more, having more conversation, and the God topic is one we could spend hours on for sure. So look forward to that in the future as well.
For sure, man. Have a good rest of your week, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man. You too.